My name is Bernice Wilder. My mother must have been very romantic to name me. Beatrice, probably after Dante's Beatrice. Bernice for the Greeks. I was born on 116th Street, Lenox Avenue, in the city of New York. My father's a New Yorker, and my mother was Pennsylvanian, from Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Somewhere around 6 o'clock in the morning, my father was, I was the first one after 10 years, and so my father was very proud and went down to see his mother at 6 o'clock in the morning to tell her she had a new grandchild. I was a miserable baby. My mother sent me out every morning around 6 o'clock in the morning because I woke everybody up. It was very hard to keep a nursemaid for me. My sister has a picture of me on the stoop of the house, and I really look, well, my cap is awry, and I have a very sour look on my face. Well, after all, being sent out at 6 o'clock in the morning on a cold October morning, who wouldn't look sour? When my youngest sister was born, I was taken into my mother's room to see her. A nice bassinet there. No, they didn't go to hospitals much in those days. But then doctors made house calls. I don't know how I got it, because somebody must have told me that when I was a year and a half, I was found walking the railroad tracks at Bradley Beach, New Jersey. I supposedly had a nursemaid. We used to have a summer cottage down at Bradley Beach. I went to what they called a model school in New York. It was just a regular public school, but I think probably they called it the model school, so they must have been sending teachers there or something. And I was immediately put in first grade, you see, because I was smart. Don't put this in the thing. But, I mean, I think I must have been reading when I was 3. I don't know. After all, I had a sister who was 12 years older than I, and a sister 10 years older and a brother 12. So we always had a lot of books. In fact, we had the Book of Knowledge, but I'd probably been through a whole lot of the Book of Knowledge by the time I was 5. Anyhow, I was put in first grade, and my younger sister, who was a year younger than I, but my mother wanted to be rid of us both at the same time, so she falsified her age. However, Florence didn't make it into first grade. She made it into kindergarten. And later in life, she had a time with the Social Security Board trying to get her birthday settled. We always lived either across the street or around the street from the corner, so my mother could watch us go to school. And we moved a lot. In New York, you move a lot. It's how you get a clean apartment. Newly painted and all. So let's see. We couldn't have. This was on St. Nicholas Avenue, 180 St. Nicholas Avenue. And we moved to 321 St. Nicholas Avenue, which was across the street from PS 157. And at PS 157, I must have been in this, probably from the second grade. We stayed there longer. Gosh, that's almost 100 years ago. Incredible. I think our first year there, I think it was wartime, because funny things with apartments in New York. See, there were 7 of us in the family, but landlords didn't want all these kids. What my mother did was say that Florence and I, and the new baby, that Shirley was born in 1916, and the war started in April 1917. My brother would have been 1897, 20. Not quite 20. He was 19 when he went off to the war. But my mother said that my sister and my brother were the parents of this baby. See, because this was only going to be temporary. That was to make the landlord happy, you see, because he didn't want all these people.
What was your brother's name?
She only had my father and us, my sister and me. Valentine Dewey. He was named after Admiral Dewey, who sailed into Manila Harbor when he was born. My mother's a great patriot. She really was. Of course, we called him Val. Valentine was after her German uncle. It's a good German name. I really hardly ever saw my father very much. He used to, we were very rich to start with, because his parents left him their entire fortune, to the anger and disgust of his sisters and whatnot. So I never got to know my father's kin, as it were, because there was no, they wouldn't talk to us anymore, and we didn't talk. But my father managed to run through his entire fortune by gambling. He belonged to, this name would appeal to you, Rutgers. He belonged to a club called the Rutgers Club, which sounds to me like the kind that they have in England, you know, these gentlemen's clubs, because he gambled all his money away. So we became poor, which was one reason we had to go to this, a cheaper apartment, because we first, before I went to school, oh, I forgot to tell you, I fell in the lake at Central Park when I was 4. We lived right across from Central Park, 110th Street. And my nursemaid, as usual, was talking to the cop, I suppose, because the next thing, the cop had to fish me out of the lake, which is the biggest one in the park. She didn't last long either. My nursemaids never lasted very long. There was one we had after we got poorer. She used to tell the weirdest stories that gave me nightmares. My mother would get rid of her. But it was after we lived, when I went to the model school. We were still rich up until the time I was almost 7. And one of the reasons we had to move was because we got poorer. And poor mother, accustomed as she was to having been rich, she used to have to go to her sister, who was married to a rich man, to get money for milk for us. However, we seem to have survived. Playing bridge, I guess. PS 157. Principal's name was Campbell, and my mother used to enjoy watching her leave school. She was the epitome of a kind of masculine. You know, New York schools, teachers couldn't be married in my time. They had to be unmarried, give their attention to their pupils. At least, I never had a teacher who was married. There was no girls' class. Boys and girls were separate classes in elementary school. Well, actually, I went to an all-girls high school, too. But elementary school, I was there through 6th grade, because at 6th grade, they had just discovered junior highs, but junior highs were different than they are here. Junior high was only for bright pupils. You skipped a year. You did your, you went from this, you had to have the permission of your parents, and you went from you went to junior high, and the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade were put into 2 years. And so I was bright enough to go to junior high. Riverside Junior High School, 148th Street. I used to walk to school from 126th Street so that I could save my nickel car fare. One didn't get very much in the way of allowances then. In fact, when I went to Sunday school and I asked for my dime for collection, my mother would say, "Go to your father." And my father would say, "Go to your mother." And I got so tired of that that I just simply saved my money so that I wouldn't have to ask. When I went to junior high, I was in section book 13 times 1 week. My mother used to be at school almost every week, listening to all my misdeeds. I gather I was bored to death or something in class, because I'd read all the books and stuff already. I remember my French teacher sent me out in the corridor. He was a sweet man, but he sent me out in the corridor because I was disturbing the class. And I did the Charleston, which caused trouble in the corridor, so I got sent to the principal. My name was in section book 1 week 13 times. And the principal was going to expel me. Unless my mother took me to the institute. Well, she had to take me to Bellevue for a have a psychological exam. So we went to Bellevue, and the doctor tapped my knees and had to make little boxes. Told my mother I was just a growing girl. Gave me a tonic. But that satisfied the principal, so I got kept. I was in a French play, and I was a nun in the French play, wearing the whole works habit and all my mother made for me. And when I came out on the stage, the whole school laughed. Beatrice, a nun? I can't remember the name of the play, but it was French. I did win a picture from the Metropolitan Museum of Art for the school. They had an essay. So I don't think the principal really wanted to expel me, but she felt she had to. But I had what really happened, I had a crush on this one teacher. She was my homeroom teacher, and her name was Miss Monahan. And she'd keep me after school, and she'd make believe she was busy, and I'd be sitting there. And this one time she looked up and she said, "How many children are there in your family?" And I said, 5. She said, "Well, you only should have 1/5 of your mother's attention, and you get much more." And she said, "We have 32 pupils in this class, and you should have 1/32 of mine." And she took her pencil. I've never forgotten this. I can still see her. She took the point of her pencil on the paper, and she said, "As for the world, you're not even as important as this dot from my pencil." She said, now go home and study Blessed Are the Meek. So I went home and I wrote her a poem. In all this world, there's no one like my teacher, Miss Monahan. I didn't reform until my 5th term high. I think I even had pink slips for the dean in high school. I said to her, oh, I know, once I threw a snowball at my English. His name was Mr. Cusack, and he was just hanging his coat up in the locker when I made a snowball from the windowsill. It had snowed. And I threw it at him, and it hit him right under the ear. March yourself out to the principal. I used to get sent to the student government. I think I told what, about having, I couldn't begin to express my contempt for the student government. I forget what my punishment was for that, I'm not sure. But my 5th term, beginning of my junior year, I was elected as secretary of my class from the homeroom, and she took me outside the door, and she said, having looked over my record, I really should not be a class officer, but if I were to reform, she would consider it. She would allow it. So I reformed from that day on. I couldn't make the Honor Society that year, but I made it for my senior year. And the teachers used to have to approve members of the Honor Society. My French teacher, who used to call me Mademoiselle Plus Sauvage, came out of this conference with all the teachers and said, I had no idea that you were such a wild person. However, I reformed for my senior year. You see, I'm meek and mild now, of course. I was stage manager for the senior play, which was, it was either a Shakespeare play because I had to get a wall built over which one side wouldn't talk with the other, you know. I broke my arm when I was 8. And from that day forth, every time I left the house in the morning, my mother would say, goodbye, don't fall. And that lasted until I left home at the age of 24. And now my friends keep it up. New York, it's a great city. Only it was peaceful then. Somehow or other, well, it's still peaceful now compared with here. They've got the murder rate in New York down. Well, I used to walk to school all the time, because whether I went to high school, it was about half a mile, and junior high was about another mile. Well, New York had transportation, you know. When I graduated from high school, I had to look for a job. And I discovered that the employers weren't interested in people who had Latin, French, English literature. Which reminds me, I may have told you this, my history teacher, we used to be seated in the class next to the window. The ones with the highest grades were next to the window, and the one with the highest had the back seat. I was somewhere in the middle. And I asked the teacher one day, I said, well, what's Ethel Herman? She was the back one. I said, what's Ethel Herman got that I haven't got? She said, well, Ethel is brilliant. You're bright. That put me in my place. school I always walked. When I got my job at the Metropolitan Life, which was on Madison Square, took the Fifth Avenue bus, which was a nickel more than the other buses, but I could ride on top. So I took the bus. My mother didn't want us to use the subway. So I always had, I went to work on the Fifth Avenue bus all the time. Back then, you know, they even had, you know how Broadway slants, they had open streetcars. Did you ever see those? There were cars without any, the conductor used to go along a step, and you know, you just sat on like benches. They were open air cars. I never had to use one unless, you know, weekends or something like that. So when I went to work for the Metropolitan Life, it was, in my mind, a great come down. I mean, you know, most of the employees there hadn't had a high school education, and so I received $13 a week. The others only got $12. This is the year 1927. Between high school, I went that very summer looking for a job. I worked ever since. About time I quit, don't you think? 84 years. I once tried a oral history project with somebody who was helping me here. And it was so awful. I played the tape back and it was terrible.